Welcome to Survey Booker Sessions. Tune in to hear from people working in a range of industries and roles to provide you ideas that you can take away and use in your own business. I'm your host, Matt Nally, the founder and director of Survey Booker, which is the leading CRM and survey management system for surveyors. I'm joined today by Gavin O'Neill, who's the CEO of GoReport, which is a leading provider of digital data collection, reporting and an analysis solution for the surveying sector. Gavin, I think if I'm right or not wrong, you're a chartered mechanical engineer by background, and you've worked sort of client side and software side over your career.
Yeah, that's right, man. I've been involved in all areas of the supply chain and the built environment, but also in other sectors and verticals such as manufacturing, professional services, retail, hospitality, and even public sector projects. And I've been a client on the delivery side. I've been a software seller, and I've been a consultant acting in between as well.
Awesome. So you know it well. I think I've got background as well in sort of the retail hospitality side, which you learn a lot quickly, I think, about processes and
You
technology there.
You absolutely do, and it's
Yeah.
always a good thing to look for in a CV of someone coming through that's had to deal directly with the general public in those environments. Yeah, for sure. You
Definitely.
learn an awful lot about customer service very quickly.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, that and the processing side. Uh, you've also covered digital transformation in those roles, haven't you? So it's not just you've focused sort of within those industries generally. You have done digital too with that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, very much so, really. I've always been fascinated by why doing something well always feels so
Mm.
much better than being part of something that isn't quite right. And I think my first kind of professional job in the built environment, I was 16 and I went straight into a place where something wasn't right. So
Mm.
you rapidly understand the kind of the frustrations that kind of frontline people have versus what people think is happening in the business versus the people trying to help with that kind of thing. So it was a really early grounding, and I guess being able to interact with everybody at all levels. You know, as a junior going into a business, you can ask very innocent questions, and many great people give you their time to help. So it just piqued my interest straight away, and actually led me down the path of engineering effectively as a career path. Um, Really, though, I think I've never been an advocate of technology for technology's sake. Really, it's more about getting that balance between people, process, and technology is the thing that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. It's easy, I suppose full disclosure, we're both operating tech companies here, but there's a time and a place for it, and there's a time and a place where it doesn't work either.
Absolutely,
Um, and I think we'll
absolutely.
discuss all of that today in terms of what is digital transformation and when. But I suppose full disclosure, we've known each other for I suppose 3 to 4 years now, having developed an integration between our systems. It's
Yeah,
gone
feels like
quickly.
longer. Do you think it go quickly? Feels like a lot longer, really.
It does indeed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a really good example. I mean, we didn't
Mm,
know each other before I
mm,
came into to Go Report, and before obviously when you were sort of bringing your product to market, kind of thing. And I
mm.
think it's a really good example of from way back then is having a meeting of minds of the right philosophy of how you want to approach these things. Customer front and center has always been both our belief points, really. And I think then going from that to working with each other on trying to understand what would make a client's life better, and everything else kind of fell from that. I think it's been hard work to get to the point where it's now easy,
Yeah.
and that's that the hard work happens before a client sees it effectively. And now it's a very very straightforward implementation that we've got, that we believe and our clients believe adds tremendous value to them.
Yeah, and it's a key thing you said there. Actually, is we didn't rush into it either straight away. There was a lot of time in getting it right. And I suppose the flip side effect of that is this isn't meant to be starting to sell us, obviously, but we'll move on to other things in a minute. But what it proved is when you do put the time in and think things through properly, then you don't have to then do ongoing updates and get things changed all the time and stuff. It just is seamless from the beginning.
Yeah, I think the concept of in software terms, the minimum viable product, or minimum
Mm,
viable product, was really well thought out, and we were, we socialized it, as might be said, around both our existing clients and people who would be potentially our clients, to understand not just what we thought was a good idea, but how they saw themselves with that solution in mind. That's a big aspect of all software businesses. Is really our job is not for our clients to tell us um, uh, what to do for us to make money. It's our job for our clients to tell us what their challenges are, and for us to come up with the right solution. We
Mm.
are there to set their aspirations, basically, or help them with their aspirations and meet their problems. We're not reliant on them to design the solution. That's on us. That's what we get paid for, basically.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that's a nice sort of intro to, I suppose, the background of who we are and what we're going to be talking about. But so across this episode, we're going to discuss digital transformation, I suppose, the good, the bad, how to get it right, where it goes wrong. Um, for our first topic, should we take a look at, I suppose, what is digital transformation? We'll come onto the jargon in a second, but when should you adopt tech and why? So, as a starting point, I mean, what's your thoughts around what digital transformation is or means?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you did an internet search on it, you wouldn't be short of definitions or people
No.
who've maybe written books or made their careers off talking about it. I think it's useful to have an overview word that sits over the top of it, really. But I think it really does matter about the context of your own business, what size you are, what shape
Yeah.
you are, where you're starting from, where you're going to, and that is what really it defines what a project is for you in your context in your business. I think from the highest level, and certainly in the much larger projects that I've been involved in, I think it's often thought about maybe from board level down or investor level down in terms of pure efficiency at
Mm.
times. And it's not really surprising when you consider, that should be a key factor in any business investment. Is it making you do more with less, et cetera, et cetera. However, the best projects that I've been involved in began with more of a challenge to the business on how it thinks of itself in terms of its
Mm.
current and potential customers, its competitors, how it impacts the profession or sector or vertical that it works in. And I think when you start with those considerations in mind, it makes it a lot easier to divine the value of a transformation project. And to make better decisions as you go. For example, there have been many expensive digital transformations that have failed because the focus was on efficiency for the company, and not how easy that company made it for customers to buy from them. And guess what happens? Customers go and
Mm.
buy from someone that makes it easier for them. So that's I think if you start from if you took the digital out from it and focus on how are we as a business impacting on our stakeholders effectively, and then digital comes in later.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think actually digital transformation has potentially a negative connotation now because there's enough large corporations. I'm talking about any industry where they've put in so many tech-driven processes.
Hmm.
Maybe you can argue this with the banks now. You can't go into a high street bank anymore because it's shifted all
Yes.
to digital. So it's all about finding the right balance and mix of things that works for you, your customers, and everything else. I suppose. I suppose we start with timing. How do you decide when to start looking into a transformation process of but I suppose digital in this particular example. But when do you start with that?
It's a great question. It's the question, really. I think to your to the comment you just made there around it has negative connotations. I think we are now in an era where if we sort of look at sort of mid businesses that have been around for at least 8 to 10 years kind of thing, they will have had in some aspect of their business some form of digital implementation. And for businesses, then how do you separate yourselves when everybody is the same? And the reality is, when you've worked around a lot of businesses, they're not the same. They're far from the same. Um, and I think some of the negative connotations come from failures, effectively, where the right balance of people, process, and technology wasn't employed, the right consideration of what you were doing it for, and therefore it has become, in some instances, sort of synonymous with reducing headcount, reducing staff numbers, that kind of thing, that kind of efficiency drive. And really, that's not where you or I are in the business of. We're in the business of, I always believe if you remove the things that you don't need to do because there's a better solution. It makes you a better business, and therefore you are a better business for your customers. So we should never shy away from that. But the objective is not to, replace people as the start point. Effectively, it's to give them better tools to do their job and better processes to do their job. So when you again come back to that start point, what's the perfect time? And the reality is there's never will be a perfect time. You have to take the time to consider and invest in improving your businesses. That time is only afforded to those who have work to do and deliver. You don't often have the luxury of investing in your business or thinking about your business when there's no work to do. You're too busy trying to survive. So there's always a trade-off for me for delivering. um, you have to trade off delivering for your clients with taking the necessary time to consider what could you do, what would it mean for your business, how to do it, what would it cost, how to ensure that you realize the benefits and value, which is the most important thing in your business, is better after you've made the changes, after you've made the investment. That's a very important part, and that's why I think a lot of digital transformations in the past fail, because that closed loop of, are we now better from what we've done, hasn't been properly rounded out effectively. The project that starts, the people involved disappear, you then somebody else picks it up, deems it a failure, and then you cycle around again. Um, so for me, digital transformation starts with something that every business does or should do already, to a greater or lesser extent. It starts with asking the question, what are the challenges the business faces today? What are your aspirations? Is it that you want sales growth? Is it you want to reduce cost? Do you want to scale the size and shape of your business? Do you want to do more for your clients or with your clients? Do you want to attract the best candidates? Are you trying to manage your risk better? These are all business challenges. And any transformation project, whether it includes an element of digital or not, starts with those questions that you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I completely agree with that. I'll probably touch more on this in topics 2 and 3 around, how to get the process right and measure success and understand what you're actually trying to get out of it and put that context into the sort of implementation phase. So we'll come on to
Mhm.
that. Um, but I completely agree with you've got to understand what your problem is first. Otherwise, what are you implementing any process change for, whether it's tech or not? So
Mhm.
without that, you've really got to understand what you're trying to achieve, what you're not happy with, and then you can establish what the goals are that you want to measure against later
Yeah.
on. Uh,
If you don't understand where your high level, at least hypothesis of what you want to
mm,
do, you don't have a feedback loop. You don't have a way of addressing whether, because with any transformation project, while you're delivering, it can get difficult. Your time is squeezed. You're having to think about things. It's easy to regress to what you already know.
yeah,
And more importantly, if you've got a bigger company and more people involved that are maybe two, three direct communication steps away from the reason why you're doing it in a business, then it can be easy you can see why failure happens or where progress slows, in the first instance. And so you always have to keep banging that drum about what the reason is, what the aspiration is for the business, and feedback to that.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I think the other point you touched on around perfect time. I think there's issues I occasionally see with this that where people get it wrong, and there's obviously therefore how do you get it right, but Um, one of the key ones is I see in the industry is the sort of I call it the make hay while the sun shines fallacy, and we've talked about
Mm.
this before on different episodes. But it's there's often this that maybe it's an excuse, I don't know, but it's really busy. The market's packed. You're booked 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in advance. You don't have time to deal with it, and so we're not going to do it right now. But then conversely, when you get quiet, you also don't put the time into it because now we're worrying about getting sales back up and getting the lead time back in. Um, and so there's constantly this not the right time to do it because either we're too busy or we're too quiet.
Yeah, and the I think it's not about. I think the right time is where the challenge outweighs not doing anything. And as you say, good performance masks that. In a business, if everybody's flying, it masks that. Um, and if you're if you're struggling, where it's not so long ago that we had a pandemic situation where all the rules of business kind of uh, maybe didn't get thrown out the window, but get set aside for a period of time while we tried to work out what survival meant during that period, business survival I'm talking about in that sense. And so, with all the best plans in the world, something like that coming around as a curveball, changes the dynamic. But from a normal business operation, I think it should be a standing item on your agenda. How can we be doing better? And that's what leadership in a business is about, really, because you want everybody contributing to that, but the direction, the strategic direction, is set by the leadership in the business at whatever level, business unit level, line manager level, board level, investor level, whatever it happens to be. That's the driving force. And what do we know about business? The growth curve isn't always upwards. There will always be fluctuations. There will be plateaus. There will be step backs. Those sorts of things. So you almost have to ignore all of that and just think every day, how can I do better for my customer?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think, yeah, the sooner you plan in those meetings, you say those to review where you are and where you're going to be. It means that when everything does drop, you're not in a panic situation. You're being as effective as you can be from that point already.
Yeah,
So there's yeah.
yeah. I think in terms of practical advice for any business, sort of or anybody listening to this and thinking about it, really is in terms of moving forward, it's to remember really important to remember that the decision to make change, whether it's in software, process, people, skill sets, whatever it happens to be, it's not actually the first thing you do. It's something you decide to do once you've evaluated your options and you've thought about your challenges. So, in my experience, a lot of businesses delay consideration of what they might do for fear that they don't have time to make the changes. They're bringing the problem forward effectively. They're borrowing problems from tomorrow to stop them doing today. And I think, if every business has built in that regular dialogue and a normal review on areas of opportunity for improvement, it opens the door for the dialogue there, both upwards and downwards, to have it as a standing item, and therefore the right time starts to come sharply into focus. And I think you and I both talked about in the past, where you have maybe people who are resistant to change in a business, either just generally resistant to change, or perhaps there are, oftentimes there are valid reasons, and maybe, I don't know, what are your thoughts on how you deal with that?
Well, I suppose before I come to that, I think interestingly it ties into what one of the things I wanted to discuss was misconceptions,
Mm,
which then causes this resistance to change. Um, and I suppose that varies for all firms, but yeah, one of the ones we see, I think it touches on exactly what you said, which is staff potentially worrying about is that their job on the line?
yeah.
Um, why are we going through this process? Is it because actually maybe we're not performing very well and we don't know, and we need to cut costs, and that's why technology is coming in, um, or it's potentially a different issue, which is they were excited initially, but they weren't provided the support and training to get used to it, and
Mhm,
therefore that's not confident with the product,
mhm.
just because they've just been thrown at it, and they've got to crack on. Um, I don't know. What do you think about sort of misconceptions? Do you think they vary quite differently between businesses? Is that a driving
Yeah,
factor
I mean,
behind?
I think the definition of calling it a misconception is what the problem is. The truth lies somewhere between what you've said and what you've been told, basically, and it's finding that out. I've worked in some very large, multi-million pound transformations, both externally providing support to businesses and internally bringing systems in. And um, one of the things that I always kind of think is a first rule is, when you hear the dissenting voice, there's often I guess you can start to see how people try to manage the dissenting voice. Either avoiding it, excluding from a project, keeping on the sideline, that kind of thing. They would always be the person I would go straight to. straight to the dissenting voice, because you may what you generally find is, yes, there are definitely people who are resistant to change, so out of fear, pure
Yeah.
fear, and they wouldn't be able to tell you what that fear is. They might be fear of the job, they might be fear of you making their life difficult, they might be fearful of a change that takes them into an uncomfortable area with their own skill sets,
Yeah.
or they just not may not be used to it. But you need to find out. You need to find out what is the issue. And I've always found that when you do that, you'll find some little nuggets of information that perhaps maybe they've lived through it before. Maybe they were somewhere else in another business that had happened and it failed. And that's gold dust really at that point, because you want to really bring that out and go, well, let's make sure that doesn't happen again. Let's understand what it felt like for you in your position, so that we don't make the same mistakes. And we don't intend to make those mistakes, but let's be extra careful. Let's be extra careful with our communication. And you can find, when you do that, you can get the people that are most vocal about not wanting to do it becoming the biggest champions for what you want to do. Now, not in all cases. Sometimes that's what leadership is for. Sometimes you have to keep pushing
Yeah.
ahead and bring people with you. Um, but one of the things I always find is interesting. It's it takes people an awful lot longer to ask for digital solutions than it does for them to ask for them back when they are taken away. So when
Yes.
somebody's in a business, they've been through a transformation or they're using a tool, they then go somewhere else that doesn't have the same tool sets that make their life easier. They're the first people to ask for them.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think context matters a lot, but definitely um, both talking and listening. Listening more, I think, is the way to get past misconceptions.
Yeah, I think that covers sort of personal or employee misconceptions really nicely. I suppose the other side, sorry, to the story is um, thinking that tech is for like enterprise firms, big firms only, and actually as an individual, perhaps, because we've got an industry that's very small SME driven, rather than all being big firms like the banking sector, for example. I keep picking up on that one. I maybe I need to look at others.
Something
Um,
you want to share secretly?
my banking's fine at the moment.
Like, okay, good
Um,
to know. Good to know.
but yeah, I think there can be a misconception that it's not going to provide the ROI or the benefit to you as a smaller firm, when actually it's the complete opposite. It's as an individual, you're more likely to, I think, to derive benefits because you're trying to spin all the plates yourself. So anything that helps you is going to be better.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think the benefit of uh, we have, I consider myself to still be very young, and it's only whenever I kind of look back at how many years or decades of experience I've got in business, that you realize that actually you know in this small amount of the last 20-25 years, we've seen such tremendous change in what is possible for us as in businesses, and as individuals, in terms of the tools and the tool sets that we have. The smartphone in our pocket, the wealth of information and knowledge that can bring when used appropriately is quite remarkable. But I think business has changed dramatically. I mean, when I started in in a very large American contractor. At that point, you know, the consideration that your data wouldn't be sitting on a box with blinking lights in a room somewhere within the building was a completely alien concept. And when I then moved into software sales, selling solutions like that, the idea of it would be over my dead body, would that our data ever leave this building effectively. And if you flash forward a very relatively short period of time, everything we do is in the cloud. And so that is such a fundamental shift in that just happened. No one people had to be individuals didn't need to be convinced as such, because the argument just changed, the whole parameters of the argument changed. And because of that shift and because of that move to cloud computing, it's meant that so many of the tools that would have been the preserve of the business and the investment of a business are in the hands of individuals effectively. It used to be
Yeah.
when I was very young, the best tools were what my dad brought home from work effectively.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then over a relatively short period of time, it flipped around, and the best tools were the ones in the hands of the consumers, and businesses were scrambling to catch up with what would an iPad do for the business, what would accessibility to data at any point do for a business. So I think that today we're very lucky in that a lot of things are possible. A sole trader can have a completely online order processing through to payment collection, through marketing solution like yourselves, in a very, very short period of time with quite minimal investment. So I think once you set that as the baseline, I think it just then puts it back on how well you run your business, or how you think about your business. And I think running a business in the most efficient way, giving the best possible service, and deliver value for your clients, it's applicable whether you're a sole trader or an enterprise with thousands of employees. The only difference is the differences are the context of your priorities and the resources you have available to support you. When it comes to the software in particular, I think the first question there, is this software tool that I'm considering right for me? I'm in my context. So there are software tools, particularly in other verticals or industries, that are designed with an expectation of different types of use. A manufacturing ERP system, enterprise resource planning system, is an example that wouldn't have a context of a sole trader, and so it would be designed around an entry level where an organization is much larger with multiple stakeholders, etc., etc. In both GoReport and Survey Booker's case, our software has been designed for the surveying industry, and so we considered that everyone from sole traders to large enterprises should find it easy to adopt, gain value from quickly, and because that's the landscape of the surveying industry. A sole trader can produce the same output on an individual basis as a much larger organization. Both on the residential side, it's often the same product, a level 3 survey, for example. But when it comes to commercial, we have specialist sole traders, but we have much larger enterprise solutions where it's not the output that's different per se. It's the capability and capacity and ability to draw on other expertise effectively, which is why they do it that way, kind of thing. So I think, focus on the business, and then make sure don't try and shoehorn a tool that's designed for a different context into your environment. Challenge your vendor to make the case for your context, basically.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to what we'll talk to probably topic 2 onwards, which is choosing the right vendor. And yeah, you could look at something in another industry, it's cheaper, perhaps, but actually it's completely wrong, and you're not going to get the benefits from it.
Yeah, well, there's the one that's focused for another industry, and then there's the generic, which is focused on all industries, which can be quite as bad, because it's
Yeah,
60-70% of the way there, and cheaper because it's targeted at the masses. But when it's that little nuance of what you need for your profession, it falls short. And that can be enough to move a project from value to failure very quickly.
yeah, and the amount of cost that goes into them both
Mhm.
bespoke development to personalize and bits and pieces. I
Exactly.
think the final misconception for me, and then we'll move on to topic 2, is I think often automation people misconstrue as being impersonal. And again, it just comes down to what are we automating, and choosing the right processes to change. If you're automating the production of I don't know, an invoice or a terms document or whatever it might be, the
Hmm.
customer doesn't care how that's produced, and it's no
Hmm.
no less personal once it gets to them. But yes, if you automate every single part of the inquiry process, and you cannot speak to someone to
Hmm.
understand what product do I need or something like that, then yes, then it is impersonal. So it's down to what you implement and how you implement it.
Oh,
Yeah,
completely. And I think that's always been the case. Before, going back before software and computer availability, that would have been the same in any business environment going back centuries. Basically, I think if you lose you should be looking for ways of doing it better, but it should be gauged against, does it improve the experience of the people that effectively give you money? So you doing efficiency gains internally, theoretically, that should be giving the client better value for money because you're not having to load your costs into whatever you sell. But in terms of their experience, that's a very important important thing to really understand. What are you doing it for? It goes back to what we were saying at the start. If you look at it in pure surveying terms, what are we trying to do at GoReport? We're trying to create more time for the art of surveying, right? So we're trying to remove the busy work, we're trying to remove the duplication. What we're definitely not interested in is automating the survey production. We're automating the publish of the valuable insight and guidance, because we don't think surveyors should be spending all of their time wordsmithing, or maybe not wordsmithing, but fiddling around with formats and branding on that on a regular basis, kind of thing. What they should be doing is getting their point across to what their clients actually be paying them for. You know, a client, whether it be residential or commercial, the surveyor's not getting paid to collect the data in real terms. They're getting paid for the insight and guidance and actionable insight that the end user gets. So if you're spending all of your time on data collection, and bringing it together and aggregating it, which gets exponentially worse the larger up you go in terms of the size and scale of the projects that you work on, um, then that's not a good outcome. So you want to automate that and give more time for the surveyor to really show their value.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise, for us, it's automate all the admin that goes around the job, and you can focus on surveying and speaking with customers, not being more
Well,
personal. Like
absolutely.
ironically, not less personal.
Yes, yeah, that's very true. The difference between the output being the product as opposed to the service that you're offering. We
Mm,
have, um, like I said, the residential and the commercial side. On the commercial residential side, there's obviously are you assisting with the buyer or seller of a property to make an informed decision? That's the purpose.
yeah,
It's not about tremendously have figured out all of these defects. It's about are they able to make the next step in their journey. And it's the same on the commercial side when it comes down to it. Is oftentimes it is, we do not have unlimited budget. What are the things that we can invest in that makes the biggest difference to our business and to our customers? And that, the surveyor plays a hugely important job in that decision making process.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that nicely wraps up what digital transformation is. Understanding the context, I suppose, around reviewing what your problems are, and then sort of, yes, what misconceptions might come in. I suggest join us for part 2, where we're going to discuss how to choose the right supplier for your business. So tune in for that.